There's this news that has been circulating around the internet since the past couple of weeks, and it's everywhere.
Apparently, a compound found in cannabis prevents the virus that causes COVID from penetrating healthy human cells.
That certain cannabis extracts may actually stop the coronavirus from infecting human cells.
Kann Cannabis uns Menschen vor einer Corona-Infektion schützen?
Cannabis compounds can help prevent the virus that causes COVID-19.
So what's going on? It all started because of this paper. But before we go through this article, I have to mention that this video is mainly for educational purposes. So researchers started to develop a vaccine that can prevent individuals from getting infected by this virus. Although at this moment, only about 56% of the world population are fully vaccinated. But vaccinating people is only one strategy that can help curtail disease spread and reduce mortality. Treatment and prevention of coronavirus are as important as vaccination. That's why a huge number of companies are already trying to find drugs against the virus. But how do companies actually look for drugs against viruses? To answer this, we have to look at how viruses infect us. Generally, every virus has a life cycle when it enters the body and replicates using our cells, energy, and compartments. Their goal is to produce a lot of themselves so that they can enter other cells in the body and spread really quickly. So scientists look for drugs that can block any parts of this life cycle of the virus, and this is extremely important to know which step exactly is to search for from the beginning. You all heard about how vaccination works, so I won't go through it again. But just as a reminder that almost all corona vaccines have something to do with the spikes. These spikes of the coronavirus are the essential elements of how the virus attaches to the cells and eventually enters the cells of the body. It is also the reason why they named the virus after it. This video, however, has another side, and that's where a lot of people are misinformed about the news that cannabis cures COVID. So I'll be focusing on underlying the issues of information or misinformation. We have a botanical travesty of how hemp has been treated or mistreated over the past 70 years. Also, the travesty of how the endocannabinoid system has been ignored since its discovery. What? Endocannabinoid system, huh? We learned in school about all kinds of systems in our bodies. Skeletal system, muscular system, circulatory, nervous, blah, blah, blah. But nothing about the endocannabinoid system. Yes, just like other body systems, this system is a biological system composed of endocannabinoids, which are endogenous lipid-based retrograde neurotransmitters that bind to cannabinoid receptors. And cannabinoid receptor proteins are expressed throughout the vertebrate central system. That means that it has always been there, even before humans. All the body systems are interconnected with each other with the endocannabinoid system. Every single organ of the body has these receptors. Our body produces endocannabinoids like anandamide and 2-AG that are made on demand, which means when the body needs it, they are made and they broken down rapidly in the body. There are also cannabinoids that come from outside the body. These are called phytocannabinoids. There are over 113 distinct cannabinoids that are isolated from the cannabis plant. Cannabidiol, CBD, is considered one of the most interesting emerging molecules since it exerts a wide range of therapeutic effects. CBD is also a non-psychotropic phytocannabinoid, meaning that you would not have the euphoria effect when you use it. Now, when we combine our two sides of story together and search on PubMed, we get 57 results. Since 2020, when researchers started working on the effects of cannabinoids on coronavirus in every possible aspect. Richard van Bremen and his team used different and exciting techniques to see if they can block the spike protein of the virus, and more precisely, this small part called S1 subunit, using botanical extracts. Through a novel and precise technique called affinity selection mass spectrometry, they screened these extracts and then they identified several cannabinoids that bind to the spike protein of the coronavirus. That's interesting, right? They continued working only on CBDA and CBGA, the acidic form of cannabidiol, and cannabigerol, another interesting phytocannabinoid in the hemp plant. So what else did they find? Here, they used computational modeling and found the binding interaction of the cannabinoid acids of the coronavirus spike protein as one subunit. But ideally, it is best to co-crystallize this whole interaction and find the binding sites. Then the interesting part of the paper, which is experiment on cells. So they used different cell lines and different variants of the viruses, including the alpha and beta variants. No cells were infected when using CBDA and CBGA in higher concentrations. This means that these compounds block viral entry of coronavirus through binding to the spike. Now that you understand how cannabinoids potentially inhibit COVID infection in the laboratory, nevertheless, the story doesn't end here, especially with the current pandemic and that cannabis cures COVID.
CBDA and CBGA bind to specific locations on the virus spike protein, and these locations are necessary for the spike protein to interact and infect human cells. And if we can block that interaction by putting a barrier between the spike protein and the human cell, that can stop the spread of COVID.
So the question is this study reliable? Of course, some experiments were performed, but we need to understand that these experiments were done in the lab. Also, the virus is mutating for God's sake, and like other extensive use of drugs, the resistance of cannabinoids to the variant is possible. There are also drug-drug interaction studies between cannabidiol and anti-COVID-19 treatments which are lacking.
And this is a study about learning what's working. It is not advice about what to imbibe or take to fight COVID at this juncture.
But let's not forget that there are other areas in terms of COVID infection, and that cannabidiol targets several receptors in our body and displays a multifaceted immunomodulatory activity that could limit the severity of COVID infection. The authors of this paper suggest the combination of vaccination and CBDA-CBGA treatment in a novel way to create more challenging environment for SARS-CoV-2 to enter cells and escape. This is called complementary medicine, a mix of conventional medicine and natural medicine. More information on this topic and its benefits are on our channel. Take care and see you next time.